Mr. Goolsby, let's just kind of start with the defensive class overall. And I know a lot of people are very excited to hear your breakdown of this, especially considering, you were a linebacker and there's a really good linebacker class, maybe the best in the country. So to start, Mike, your overall impressions about this defensive class before we break them down individually.
It seems like, Mike, we touched a lot of different positions with this class. Um, you've got like a nose tackle, you've got a three technique to me, and we'll get into this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a defensive end, you've got a Mike linebacker, you've got a rover, you've got a will. I mean, you've got a safety, you've got a corner. We might have a safety that's a wide receiver. We'll get into that. So very well-rounded class. Not surprising to see Freeman bring these kids in. We touched on this in talking about the offensive side of the ball with the class. The way the defense has played thus far this year has been tremendous. And it's just like, man, wait till Freeman gets a couple of his guys. So there's a few elite kids in the class. And it's just really having watched Freeman's scheme, and then you see some of these kids and some of their traits, the body type. And by the way, Mike, we should maybe have a drinking game tonight. It's like every time I say length and or body type, we need to drink for those viewers at home. But like the body types and some of the skill sets that these kids have, and then you can kind of just forecast plugging them into Freeman's scheme. It's going to be electric for a couple of years here to come.
All right. Let's start with Nolan Ziegler, Notre Dame's second commitment of the class. He is. I'm really interested to hear what you think about him positionally. This is his senior year film, 17 minutes of it, playing small ball Michigan. I believe his team won, I think, all four state titles all of his 4 years of high school. So tell me what you see with Nolan Ziegler.
So I'm going to kind of, when we go through this, I'm going to sort of go through my notes, and then we'll kind of circle back. So I said he's a longer Jack Kaiser.
Okay, I like that.
A longer Jack Kaiser's got a knack for making plays. He's similar to Burnham in terms of like general measurements. I think Burnham's a thicker kid in the class, but just similar type players. Doesn't necessarily wow me athletically, but he apparently he tests well, Mike, in terms of 40, measurables and things like that. He has tremendous football instincts, like a really high IQ. I would say like out of this linebacker class, like this kid has probably the best overall feel for the game in terms of blitzing, run coverage, pass coverage, and again, sort of making plays, like turning the ball over on the defensive side of the ball. Do you remember when we saw, and these are notes, folks, that I'm taking as I'm watching their film. This is just sort of what comes to mind. Do you remember when we saw Kaiser play safety against Navy?
Sure.
So I think Ziegler's a better athlete overall than Kaiser and a little bit more length. I don't think he's quite as stout in terms of his overall build at this point, but that'll come. I imagine he'll play his way into becoming a starter in terms of Nolan Ziegler. Another thing that I put, and this is interesting, and I think this may correlate with a lot of the kids, especially on the defensive side of the ball tonight, is like sometimes when you watch defensive players at the high school level, higher level kids like Nolan here, they have to tempo their speed, right? So as to not like overrun plays. So you might watch Nolan Ziegler's film, and he might, and again, not jump off the screen in terms of just burst and overall like flat out top end speed. But I think some of that is kind of plays back into what I was saying in terms of his overall like football awareness, football instincts, tracking a ball inside out, some of that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I think he's going to end up being a rover.
Okay.
And we talked about this last night with like the running backs, Mike, and the running backs on the roster and the current roster and the kid coming in, like they've all got kind of an inherent skill set, but they're also multiple at the same time in terms of like Tyree's speed, but he can also kind of get some dirty yards inside. I think Ziegler's probably best asset at this point is his understanding of the pass game as
Sure.
a wide receiver. And then when you flip it over on defense, he just seems to like understand route combinations, gets his eyes through to a quarterback. Um, just is a really heady player. Like this is the type of kid that could, again, I imagine he'll grow into becoming a starter just because he's going to earn coaches' trust really quickly. I think that much is apparent.
Right.
And he has enough athleticism to play sustained minutes at the next level.
If you are just joining us on YouTube, Mike Singer and Mike Goolsby here breaking down Notre Dame's 10 defensive signees in the 2022 class. I meant to start with the defensive line, but I called a audible on accident. We're going with Mike Goolsby's former position, the linebackers. Is there something to Mike that Ziegler, bleeds blue and gold? Like the only school he wanted to go to was Notre Dame. Like that's got to mean something in that his chances of transferring someday are really low. So, if he doesn't get on the field his first, 2 years, or, if he's not really a mainstay there, you're not worried about him bolting to the portal or anything. Like you've got him for the long hauls. There's something to that is important in Notre Dame having Nolan Ziegler.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes back to that brotherhood, that program identity that Kelly kind of helped shape, Coach Kelly helped shape. Um, but that part of him, Mike, bleeding blue and gold, is that the fact that there's Notre Dame football in his family lineage.
Right.
And I think like more so than the bleeding blue and gold, I think that this kid's grown up with an understanding of the game. And like when we'll get into like a Jaylen Sneed, for example, where he does some things physically where you're just like, God damn, like that's impressive, right? Just like the wow factor is there. But then Ziegler might not have that kind of just God-given burst that Sneed has, but he makes a ton of plays. He's similar to one of the corners that we'll get into. Is like he's a playmaker, turns the ball over. That's where I kind of Jack Kaiser sort of shown a knack for making plays, and I think Ziegler's just a real high level quality football player. He'll put a little bit of put a couple pounds on, but I'd say he'd be a rover type kid that coaches should probably he'll get on the field early enough just because I think he's going to gain the coach's trust. The kid just understands the flow of defensive football. That's the most impressive part about his game thus far to me.
Okay, so if you like Ziegler at the rover position, let's move to Niuafe Tuihalamaka. Many call him just Junior Tuihalamaka. 4-star linebacker, former USC commit at one point, signed with the Fighting Irish. We'll pop on his tape now. This one seems like a Mike linebacker all the way. Mike, am I wrong?
No, you are correct, Mike. So it's funny as a USC commit. I'm sure they sold him on the comp there. It's fun for me to come up with comps. Ray Malaluga, who I believe was a second-round pick to the Bengals. Maybe a decade ago now.
Yep.
Time flies. Now so I might have you pause some of these things, Mike.
Yep.
So just go back to the beginning, dude. I'm sorry.
Nope. All good.
So the very first thing, folks, that jumped out to me when I was watching his film is I said, you can see where kids are afraid to play against him. Like the third play of the game, we'll get there, Mike. The back runs the ball, so they just run a lead.
Do you want me to roll this now,
him.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, go ahead and play it. You can just see where people don't want to get in front of him, I guess is the best way I could say it. It's pretty remarkable in terms of like just the kind of the old school sort of intimidation factor. I think when you think of a Mike linebacker, for a lot of people, this is the type of play that comes to mind. But so we'll get into like this next play here. I think the running back just runs right at him. He's got him dead to rights in the hole. In the back, back coughs the ball up. Watch this play. Takes on this guard. See how the guard just gives himself up. That's a high school kid, granted, but he's afraid to make contact with Junior. Do you understand? And Junior just takes him out with his hands right here, and the guard gives himself up. He lays down. You don't see that a lot. I mean, that was the very first thing that jumped out. I was like, good. Like these kids are a little bit afraid to play against him. He's going to be a hell of a blitzer at the college level, in particular in Freeman's scheme. We don't see. Watched his film a couple times today. You don't see a lot in pass coverage. There's maybe 2 or 3 clips where the offense is throwing the ball, and I think on a couple of them he pulls up the quarterback. But times his blitzes really well. Plays from depth, which is something that we'll get into with Burnham in terms of where he's starting as far as the depth off the ball. Um, Much better athlete, Mike, as a senior than he was as a junior. He's like cleaned up his physique a little bit. He looks just more tightly wound than he did, not as thick in the waist. Another that's really good instincts right there. Run that back, Mike, at that last play. So we'll get into this a little bit like with Burnham, but like you call that a reduced technique where like a linebacker's running through and like you try and teach kids to sort of take their blocking surface away by flipping their shoulders. So he's a supernatural kind of flow to the ball guy when it's in the box, kind of tackle to tackle. Going back to his like weight, looks like he lost a couple pounds. And this recent visit, Mike, when they had the whole class there for that kind of photo shoot, like if you look at Junior's thighs, like keeping his weight down as he continues to mature may be an issue. I mean, if this kid's like 230 now, rocked up as an 18-year-old, and just that like that genetic profile, similar to like Prince Khalid. Prince Khalid, man, is like a bodybuilder. I think kids like this can look at a weight and get bigger, get bigger. So
Oh,
that'd be something to
jeez.
track. Um, another note I put in here, plays a little high at times, and like Mike, he's literally trying to take kids' heads off. It's part of that fear factor. But when you play against, say, a Kyron Williams at the college level, um, he's going to miss some tackles, and that you're opening yourself up to a cutback. Like some of those elite backs will make you miss. Like kind of
How
if
easily coached is that out? Like, Marcus Freeman, and is he able to, get him playing lower?
some of that's going to come from Coach Bayless in the weight room, Mike. And
Okay.
that like when kids and with the first time we talked that we watched juniors Tuihalamaka's junior year film, I was talking about the same kind of thing where, like right there, Mike, that's playing a little bit high, right? Where he has to kind of tackle the guy around the shoulder pads. So some of that's going to come in the weight room in terms of like him working on his hip mobility so that he can drop his weight. So you'll hear me use that term like dropping your weight. So, and that's just be a little bit bound up in the hips. And that shows itself a couple times on film where he has to kind of run a loop in pursuit. He has to sort of has to literally running like right there. He's too high. See that, Mike? Run that back. It kind of looks cool, but you'll miss that tackle in college. Right here, that's too high. See that, Mike?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's
He's
a better
reaching.
than it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great way, dude. I'm telling you, it's a great way to tear your labrum too. Like we see football players kind of wearing that strap across their bicep. It's from stuff like that. So he's just got to work on, if I was his trainer, really breaking down his hips, which will help him to again drop that weight and play a little bit lower. But that's my critique, and that we don't get to see much of him in a passing game. But that's an old school middle linebacker, has really good feet, plays with good balance. Um, and yeah, again, I mean, there's a couple clips so I could kind of, if we get there, where you can see a little bit of tightness where the change of direction isn't right here is a little bit of tight hips. There you go. When I was talking about running the loop, Mike, you see that?
Sure.
This is to me is like they call this like a banana pursuit where he almost his path turns into like a banana, the shape.
Right. Not so much an angle.
Yeah, not so much an angle. Like that's just the change of direction and like that's a little the change of direction. And this is me being hypercritical because
You're a linebacker. I mean,
it's my position.
right.
Yeah. But the kid's a beast, dude. But first and second down, it'll be really fun to watch him come on pressures.
I mean,
Um,
there's got to be a reason why you're not seeing him in pass coverage. I mean, it's just they're either taking him out or he's just not making those plays in pass coverage, right? I mean, I
yeah,
don't want to write him off as not being a 3 down linebacker, but we just don't see him. I mean, did we see one pass coverage play?
to my point, and I think I watched this a couple times now. This will be the third time where I've seen his film, and yeah, I really think there's only like, yeah, you don't see him get his hand on any balls in the air, any passes, anything like that. So there's always room for improvement. But a kid that's probably wired like Junior, I don't imagine that he plays football to get interceptions and get his hands on passes. Like, I think he's definitely a downhill, old school Mike linebacker. Um, but that, yeah, I think that's a pretty good breakdown of him. But yeah, Ray Malaluga is my comp,
Okay.
and I think this kid will be a hellacious blitzer in Freeman's scheme. This should be fun to see.
Another player who's going to be really fun in Freeman's scheme is Jaylen Sneed. Don't know if you guys heard about him. Pop on his film here in just a second. Good group with us live here. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. We're not going to be taking any questions from the YouTube comments, but if you drop us a super chat and it's above $1, so and it's a good thing, good question. We'll get to it, but otherwise, we're trying to keep this within an hour so we can get through all these guys. So yeah, let's look at Jaylen Sneed, number 41 player in the country per Rivals and the highest ranked recruit in the class, probably per any website you're reading. But tell us about Jaylen Sneed, Mike.
Mike, go back to the beginning.
That
Sorry.
first play.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, like, folks, if you see, Sneed's essentially lined up as like a free safety here. He's kind of apexed. I mean, he's right next to the back judge, right? What is he? Number 8, number 3.
3. Yeah, 3 right here.
So the interesting part, you can go ahead and play it, Mike. Sorry, go ahead and play it. Prince Kali, his senior year of high school in Tennessee, played the exact same position in terms of like sometimes they would walk him out in coverage. So he wasn't quite an inside linebacker in a traditional sense. It's playing 4 or 5 yards off the ball. They sort of let him at like 8 or 9 and just let him run to the ball. And how lucky is Sneed to get to do that? Tells me how athletic he is. Coach is like, hey, man, I'm just going to let my dog eat. I'm going to cover him up and just let him go run and make plays. But it also tells me, Mike, that Sneed, and it's no real fault of his own, but he might need some time to develop in terms of learning how to diagnose an offense, like reading pullers, reading your keys, etc. So the further I put him away from the ball, the more time he buys himself another half a second to kind of diagnose the play and then just go be an athlete. He's played kind of a strong safety, outside linebacker, defensive end, done all 3. I know he played defensive end as a junior.
Right.
This kid, like, I've heard him compared to Jalen Smith, and I absolutely see it. But to me, man, he's more of like he's a Jalen Smith, Owusu Koromoa like combo. It's like a love child between those two, dude. And that Jalen was more of like a downhill freak athlete like as a will in high school. But Jaylen Sneed rather, I think he gives you more in the pass game than Jalen Smith did at this point in their high school careers, Mike. And I say that I've seen some of the clips, like you were at a couple Rivals camps with Jaylen Sneed, and I think you got a chance to interview him at one point. The stuff that you've seen him, you got to go digging for it. But the stuff that you see from him, like in those one-on-one pass coverage drills in particular, will make your jaw drop, folks.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, and he doesn't even really know what he's doing. It's just God-given ability taking over. So this is like an all SEC. It's almost like
speed. Jeez.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, man, like, and this isn't stuff you can coach, like, and you'll see him drop his weight in terms of when he rounds a corner in comparison to like Tuihalamaka in the snap. Trying to find critiques of him. Is he as tall as Burnham?
No.
Josh Burnham? No. But dude, when you're that's modern day football, bro. You're a 6'1" ish linebacker with long arms like a Wusu Koromoa, who's having a freaking hell of a rookie year, by the way. That's what you're looking for. To me, the shorter a linebacker is within reason, the easier it is to negotiate blocks in terms of slipping under some of these guys at the second level, and the easier it is to change direction. But this kid can do it all.
Mike, do you see this him coming off the edge here.
Yeah.
Look at
But
this.
watch this bend, right?
Look how look at the timing, like the instincts, like you keep talking about, just natural. I mean, I don't know if that's taught.
So, but
Like,
go back. Let's run this back, Mike. So this is where. Remember when, in comparison to this, is just like for anybody's watching this. When I was talking about Junior, when I was saying him running the loop, how it showed a little bit of hip stiffness. Yes. So
sure.
now in comparison to watch Jaylen come down the line here and bend. So he can turn like that. Yeah, that's just natural fluidity. It's just a natural athlete, right? He doesn't train for that. Sometimes, like you know, some kids are touched. Like this kid's a special kid. So
Hmm.
he's gonna have some time to learn. I think he could be a Will. I think he could be a Rover. I think out of the box, I feel like Colley's gonna be your stud Will. Jaylen Sneed can be your stud Rover. There's a lot to learn at that Rover position. So I feel like as he progresses, you'd see him used more so as a blitzer at this point until he starts to kind of understand route concepts and coverages and things like that. But if it's a third and obvious, almost like they kind of did with Bo Bauer, they've done with Marist a little bit, where they're just going to let them go in there and keep it simple and let them play with their hair on fire. But this is like Emil Wagner, we were talking about the offensive lineman. Like if everything goes according to plan, I mean, this is a first round draft pick. There's unquestionably, and he seems like a sweet kid. That interview you did with him, Mike, was like he was blown away that they were watching film at Notre Dame and coaches were teaching him that there's more to football than just playing the game. And it was kind of funny to listen to him say that, but like that just tells me that the production that you're seeing and the plays that you're seeing, it's just the tip of the iceberg. This kid's still just playing off a raw ability. And once you can get him coached up and teach him to understand like down and distance and formation recognition, etc., watch out.
Is there a better nickname for a linebacker than Nuke? Like that's his. That's I mean that's pretty good, right? Nuke,
They call him Nuke Sneed.
just Nuke. I mean I don't. I mean
I like it.
Nuke, because he just blows things up. I mean
Just
it's
blows things up. Yeah.
yeah. So special player. Um,
Really special player.
in 30 seconds or less, Mike, compare him with Collie. You kind of touched on this earlier because I mean they kind of seem cut from the same cloth. I think Colley's a little bit thicker, but Sneed's a little bit more explosive.
Yeah. Colley's crazy thick. I mean, Colley's like real deep chest. Um, just he's more of a thumper. He's like more stoutly built. So everybody was trying to call Collie, oh, he's going to be a rover because they saw the athleticism, right, Mike? I mean, you were Collie rover early on, and I just think it's because people see the burst and they see the ability to run. But he's more thickly built. Collie's going to end up being 6'1", 245 pounds, like again like a Devin White from LSU. That's how he's going to be built, just sideline to sideline. I think the flip side with Sneed, there's more fluidity in his hips to turn and run with people as opposed to just more downhill running things. So to answer your question, run it back 30 seconds. His job is to be covered up as in he's not going to take on many blockers and he can just fast flow to the ball, right? And just go see ball, get ball. Whereas Sneed has more fluidity to turn and run and flip his hips in coverage. And again, the length. Imagine Sneed running the seam with a tight end, like he puts his hand. I mean, that has to be a perfect pass for a quarterback to drop that ball in.
Right.
So, yeah, if you can get those two coached up, man, that is like, you got to come up with a nickname for those two. Like, obviously, like Thunder and Lightning is lame as hell, but something to that effect. Yeah.
All right.
Super stoked about Jaylen Sneed. Let's move
All right.
on.
Yep. Last linebacker to talk about Joshua Burnham. How about this? He and Nolan Ziegler share the same birthday, St. Patrick's Day. And that's when Burnham committed to the Fighting Irish over Michigan. So many Wolverines pundits thought he was going to Michigan, but Notre Dame got a big time linebacker here. So we're gonna watch his junior film. There was just individuals. Is that okay, Mike, or was there anything?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's
Okay.
most of it's 30 something minutes long, and most of it's
Yeah,
quarterback.
it's long, and then the senior film he hasn't made a highlight tape yet. So I mean, this first play we'll watch here for our YouTube audience. Make sure you hit the thumbs up whether you're watching back or watching live here. Drop super chat. We'll get to any questions right away. But I mean, this first place him at tight end. I mean, like, or he split out a receiver, I should say. Played some tight end this year, but as a junior, and then he's more focused as a senior on offense, just because he was the heart and soul of the team. So he didn't put up like huge defensive stats as a senior. Because he was, running for like 1,500 yards and,
No, he's a legit quarterback. I mean, this kid could probably play quarterback at a lot of Division I programs, to be frank about it. But obviously, body type wise, he projects to play defense. So Josh Burnham was a little bit of an enigma to me, Mike, in that the first watch, and I've seen again his film 3 or 4 times, and I wasn't blown away. I was again being critical of the linebacker position, and I don't want to. It's tough, right? Because this kid's spending full time at quarterback at the most important position on the field. So would that affect his linebacker play? It has to. So you have to take that into consideration. I appreciate his size and short area quickness.
about six
Probably
four,
project.
215. He's a big
Yeah,
linebacker.
215. But he's just such a good player overall. Like watching him play linebacker, the comp to me was Jack Lamb, a kid we signed a few years ago that people were, super heavy. He was a top 10 linebacker prospect, very highly rated. Ended up transferring out, had some injuries and things, but um, that's what Josh reminds me of. You don't see a lot of elite high end speed. He's got he's real shifty as a linebacker in terms of avoiding blocks, and we'll get there. I mean, you might have to like fast forward halfway through this, Mike. They start throwing more linebacker clips in. This is the most annoying highlight tape I
All
think
right.
I've watched all year.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Just because there's
I'm gonna find senior tape and pop that on real quick. See if we
so
can.
yeah, but that was short area quickness. He's great at again reducing, kind of slipping through blocks. His high school coach had him playing at like four yards off the ball, which I'm not a fan of just because it really muddies up the picture for him. Whereas I wish if he had an extra yard worth of depth, he'd have a better perspective in terms of being able to flow to the ball. Long arm kid, like we've seen Mike, and I've complained about quite a bit. Like Drew White misses a lot of tackles, and it's not his fault, but his arms are so short, he can't wrap up. So if Josh is going to project to probably be a Mike, we won't see that. You just have a legit athlete at the Mike position. But this kid just like he's a really good football player overall. What a weird highlight tape, though,
Yeah,
right?
no, I picked a bad game apparently because
No, it's fine. It's
this was
fine.
a
It's
snowing
fine.
game, but we got some linebacker clips finally.
No, it's interesting though. I mean, look, you see when you watch kids move around and try and change direction in snow, it's like it's even the same as high school kids that play on natural grass versus kids that play on field turf. They're not going to look quite as electric on natural grass as they will field turf. They won't look as quite as sudden. But I understand the ranking just because you can do so much, catch passes, throw passes, run the ball, make tackles, cover, kind of a jack of all trades. He will need to work on if he is going to project to play a Mike, and it's again no fault of his own. He's going to have to work on using his hands, especially if Freeman kind of sticks with that, using his hands to disengage from blocks. Does a good job of slipping underneath him. Like I said, I call it the reduced technique. That's what coaches call it. Kind of setting up a blocker and slipping over the top or slipping back door. So like there, he lets a blocker get into him. You see, no sense in having long arms if you're going to let people get into you, and that will inevitably improve. Um, but yeah, I think he projects to be a really athletic Mike. Um, It'll be funny too here, Mike. The last couple of thoughts that I sort of written down. A lot like Ziegler in terms of I think he can pick a defense up very quickly just because he's played so much quarterback, like the yin and yang of football, as I mentioned last night. So there's two things that keep young kids off the field earlier in their career: physical development and or they don't understand the playbook, right?
Right.
Whereas like Sneed will be probably more just skilled and probably ready physically just because he's like, gosh, he's so athletic and put together. And Collie was the same way,
Oh, jeez.
but they have to learn how to play the defense. Whereas I feel like Burnham will learn how to play the defense, but if he's going to play Mike, he may have to develop. You may have to give him a year or so to put on 20 pounds. It's hard to play Mike at anything south of 230 pounds. If that makes sense. So,
Sure.
but the smarts, the leadership, all of that at the Mike position, getting a defense lined up, I think he'll have that in surplus supply. So
Real quick,
excited to see
Mike.
what he. Well, I'm excited to see what he can turn into, like given a chance to focus on one position.
Sure.